Hello, everyone. Welcome to MetricStream's GRC Summit for 2020. My name is Vidyadhar Phalke. I am the Chief Innovation Officer here at MetricStream, and I'm truly delighted to welcome all of you to this terrific panel I have. The title of the panel is Assessing and Mitigating Artificial Intelligence Ethical and Societal Risk and Using the Right Tools. This is a topic very near and dear to me personally as part of MetricStream GRC Labs. We think about using AI for GRC, but even broader from that, there is this topic of not only using AI in GRC, but how do you do GRC for AI, which is essentially how do you think about sustaining risk and controls in the field of AI as we have started to see mainstream AI applications emerge. Decisions are being made by bots. Sometimes these decisions are minor, sometimes they are impacting, say, in the world of healthcare. So that's the spectrum we are on, but now we are getting into the realm of things happening at scale across industries, across walks of life, businesses, enterprises, consumers. So my panel is a fantastic panel. These are people who are actually driving some of the thought leadership. And in addition, they're actually bringing in areas of practice and practical guidance. So first of all, I'll start off with the co-founder of Artificial Intelligence Sustainability Center, Elaine Weidman-Grunewald. She has been a proponent of sustainability on the space and has been leading this effort at AISC. Tremendous background and experience in this area of standards and how to bring about ethical practices. Welcome, Elaine. The second person who is part of my panel is Björn Elowson. He is a co-founder of JobAgent. He is a psychologist by background, but they are building a startup, an exciting company in the space of matching employment to job prospects, companies, and so on and so forth. Think of them as an alternative to LinkedIn. So welcome, Björn. The next person on the panel is Fiona McPheat. She is the Director of Enterprise Risk Management at Telia. Telia is a well-known leader in media and telecom in the Nordic countries. And she leads the GRC digitization practice at Telia, and they worry about mobility patterns, they worry about privacy, and so on and so forth. So they have been running some of these practices on this topic. And finally, I would like to bring Marisa Melliou, who's the Chief Internal Auditor at OPAP. OPAP is a company in the gaming space, gambling space, and so on and so forth. So does get highly regulated. She has been running the assurance program as internal auditor at OPAP and tremendous background in analytics, robotics, process automation, cybersecurity, and so on. So welcome, panel. This is truly a remarkable time. I mean, 2020 is probably the year people will start thinking about sustaining, thinking about what systems, what tools, technologies to bring in to really make sure that the whole explainability of AI, which has been eluding us for quite some time now, starts becoming mainstream and something that becomes part of how companies think about their digitization strategies, how they think about how they will really use all this kind of new age of thinking, right? AI and machine learning kind of concepts are different from our previous statistical or software practices, where you could use you could use math to easily explain why a certain result is coming. This world is much more complicated because it depends on the kind of test programs or your training programs that you use, the sample size, data sets, how you interpret, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be a conversation where we will pull in the experiences all of these panelists have had, and also how they are bringing about making it sustained for their organizations going forward. So I'd like to kick off with starting with Elaine. She can give us an idea about some of the partnership MetricStream and AISC have been doing, but that is towards this entire, big aim that we are after. So over to you, Elaine.
Thanks so much, Vidya. I'm really excited to be part of this panel and with this incredible team here. And I want to pick up on one of the words you left off with, which was mainstreaming AI. And I just want to throw in another twist on that, that we're mainstreaming ethical AI. That's our mission. So, so to give some background and context from the ethical AI side of things, digitalization now pervades every aspect of our modern global world, not just our businesses, but our homes, our families, our finances, the delivery of vital services like healthcare and education. And I remember, being in the telecom sector for about 20 years and came upon the tech sector quite gradually. But now, as we reach a point in the world where broadbands and networks are so ubiquitous, basically every organization is digitalizing. And the drivers for that are either to cut costs and gain in efficiencies, or to create new revenue streams. And those new revenue streams often come with highly valued and uniquely tailored client and customer relationships. So that's kind of the business drivers, but technology is also a powerful accelerator for creating and scaling sustainable solutions. And we know there's many problems that technology and AI can solve. Everything from dematerializing the economy to smart grids and intelligent traffic systems that will help reduce CO2 emissions, to more complex topics like species extinction or cures for cancer, and even COVID, the pandemic we're all currently in. So there's, an amazing positive landscape here, but there's also another side of the coin that we'll be talking about today, and that's technology's potential downsides. And that is when issues can emerge when you don't understand how technology is scaling in society. And when this happens, there can be new types of pitfalls, new types of risks emerging, things like privacy intrusion, the amplification of discrimination or biases. And these things are very hard and subtle and difficult to predict. And that's because there's often a black box associated, a so-called black box, where it's complex, if not impossible, to go back and trace decisions that are being made by algorithms. Another reason why it's hard to understand this type of risk is the rapid pace of technological change, where oftentimes there's a gap, evolution, and a supporting policy environment. But at the same time, over the last couple of years, the field of AI and ethics is exploding. And the handling of these types of ethical and societal risks is just emerging onto the agenda and starting to be understood. And we know that when risks are left unattended, this can lead to unintended consequences. It's interesting in different parts of the world. For example, in the EU, we have the new guidelines for trustworthy AI that came out, which differentiate between high stake and low stake sectors. For example, if you're in healthcare or recruitment, these are typically seen as high risk sectors. But if you get the wrong recommendation for a pair of shoes that you want to buy, not so much harm done. So that would be a low stake risk sector. But even though there's a lot of attention being put on this now, there aren't so many practical tools to help companies assess and mitigate their risks. So that's something that we at the AI Sustainability Center have embarked on a partnership journey together with MetricStream to see how can we bring in new practical tools to start to account for some of these risks and dilemmas and try to see how we can mainstream ethical risks around technology the same way that MetricStream and others have done in the GRC field for many, many years. So we believe that this is an area where all business leaders really need to understand and think about how they deploy technology, how it's scaling, and be prepared to take on the responsibility that these developments imply. And having a legal or a compliance perspective alone, that's really not enough. We need to have the tech, the legal, the societal combined, and we call that the AI sustainability lens. So in conclusion to this short opening statement, I would say that any company not yet thinking about the risks and societal impacts of data-driven technologies is exposing themselves to vulnerability. And all the companies on this panel are acting proactively ahead of the regulatory curve and embracing AI and data-driven technologies in a responsible way. So in other words, leading the way and walking the talk. So at AI Sustainability Center, we're super proud to partner up with MetricStream to make ethical AI mainstream. So with those comments, I'll hand back over to you, Vidya, to dive into the panel.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elaine. So let's move the conversation to you, Björn. I think just to dovetail on what Elaine was saying, it's the system and tools to make it sustainable, right? You start with asking the right questions. The system makes you do that. So towards that end, especially in the world of JobAgent, Björn, give us an idea of kind of risks that you are seeing, the kind of things that you need to address in the short and the long term, and how did the tool help you in terms of just figuring those things out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that when it comes to recruitment overall, I mean, the recruitment industry, it is, as you mentioned, Elaine, it's a high-risk industry. So with that said, being able to engage in this tool early on while we're under development, that is something that becomes highly important for us, because it is, as you said, Elaine, if you find potential pitfalls, that doesn't look like these could be mistakes in the future, they might actually be. So engaging in this in an early stage, that became very important to us. And something that is like insights based on that, well, I would say that the biggest insight is actually transparency and governance, because you need to have transparency in the AI that you're using so that you can always backtrack and be able to explain why you're giving the users certain recommendations. And if you look into the recruitment space, I mean, this is a space where, well, we're actually giving recommendations if someone is to be given a job or not. So this is life-changing recommendations. So then it's even more important that you have this ethical place into this as well.
Okay, thank you. I think, and just moving on to Fiona from Telia. I mean, you have published the ethical AI principles. You're also a founding partner of AISC. I mean, can you give us some background in terms of the mobility data, the topics that Elaine mentioned around privacy, etc., and your use cases that is driving your journey on this topic?
Sure. Like our business is communication, and we see that having the trust of our customers is absolutely fundamental to what we're doing, and that the opportunities and benefits of AI are so enormous that we see unbelievable benefits there. And at the same time, we see how we can use that to benefit society, the way that we're working. We really need to ensure that we're not jeopardizing the way that we safeguard our customers and our stakeholders' data. And one of these reasons is why we initiated the ethical AI principles, a way of guiding us through our work, making a statement also to society and to ourselves as how we believe what the value of what we're doing. And once again, we go on. GDPR has been really huge for us, and we put a lot of effort into that. And we see this has been great in our work when we're coming to AI. So when we partnered up, we have the opportunity to work with some of Sweden's leading researchers in AI, helping us find ways of using synthetic data models. So this one way of safeguarding privacy. And from that, we're joining up forces with different cities within Sweden and being able to provide them with tools and products and how that they can get better data insights into urban planning and so forth. Yeah.
Good, thank you. And then I think on a similar lines, Marisa, from your experience, right? I mean, you are in the gaming and gambling industry, so there are clearly ethical topics, and by and large, it can be an interesting and controversial area. But you are also leading some of the thought leadership on this. But I would like you to give us some context and on this topic as well, please.
Yes, indeed, responsible gaming is a controversial area. However, it is highly regulated in all European countries with specific principles issued by the World Lottery Association, which are applied at global level. Therefore, we definitely take numerous measures at various directions, like posting corporate communication messages outside our stores forbidding entrance to minors, like promoting the concept of responsible gaming at nationwide television. We train our network agents. We allow players to set their own limits. But we also apply information system controls that terminate the player sessions, game session at specific time intervals. And you know that the job of internal auditors, among others, is to provide assurance about the design and the implementation of all these measures. So in our everyday life, we are using data analytics tools which alert us, monitor all these measures, some of these measures, and alert us for this. So this was a good case example for us to perform a risk assessment, whether it is used properly or in an ethical way. So the tool that was given to us was an eye-opener exercise for us.
So thank you, Marisa. So I do want to dovetail a little bit into this topic of eye-opener. So perhaps we start with Björn. I mean, can you give me some specific examples that you learned and in context of using the tool, or at least just thinking about the AI sustainability topic?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is, as we've talked about so far, I mean, something that is an eye-opener, because this is an eye-opener. Because we are creating a system that is scalable, totally scalable. And when we see that we can have, well, upcoming risks, since everything is scalable, then we do know that if we doesn't solve these risks early, then there will be problems later on. And one thing with that is that we need to have, for instance, a self-governing tool within the data that we're using, so that we can always backtrack and make sure that the recommendations that we give to hiring managers, for instance, that we can actually stand behind them, and that we've already controlled that these recommendations that we have given is actually not biased, and that it's working on good data that we're using. So that is something in there for sure.
So in that context, would you say the the way you think about the training sets, the way you think about the testing and the verification processes, you have kind of made it much more explainable. I mean, you have, I wouldn't say the word public, but is that data or that those parameters well exposed for anybody to question, ask, and get responses on?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Because I mean, a risk with AI, especially in the recruitment field, is this black box kind of approach, as you, Elaine, mentioned. Because when it comes to the black box usage of AI in recruitment, which is often the case, unfortunately, then that means that if you actually ask a lot of companies within this industry about their AI, the answer that you're giving back is usually, sorry, that's confidential, or, well, data goes in here and we have our robot in there and outcomes stuff that you can make decisions on. So the risk here is relying on recommendations that cannot be backtracked. So instead of going that path into this black box kind of approach, we want to use a glass box kind of approach so that we can actually have almost full transparency, so that not only us internally can backtrack what is happening here, but also users, no matter if that is a talent or a hiring manager or a recruiter, for instance.
Fantastic. So Fiona, I'm sure you have some war stories to tell on that topic. You guys deal with a lot of relevant data in this space. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we do, as saying, we feel like we are guardians of so much data, and that's, I guess, one of the things being one of the incumbents in Scandinavia. We have built up an enormous trust with our customers and our suppliers, and that's something that we really want to maintain and to keep. And with the onset of and the development of AI, it means it's even more crucial than ever before to understand how we're using data. And just as Björn is mentioning, there's so many things that we can do with AIs, but if we're not able to explain what we're doing and why, then we lose the trust. If not today, then some we will. And so the things that Björn and Elaine have already mentioned, like transparency, absolutely crucial, that we can explain how and why we got to these conclusions. Governance, I think that's probably been one of the big things that we've that's come up from the health checks that we've done together with the AI Sustainability Center. Even though we believe we're pretty good at it, there's so much more that we can do, and be in that case even being more transparent and being able to control, are we actually following up on, I mean, these brilliant guidelines, the ethical principles that we have, we're putting those into implementation, how we actually can really in practice follow up on them, so it's not just, more pretty papers, so to speak. Yeah, so governance, transparency, control, those are some of the major factors, and then out of that you get the bias, the following up on the bias once again that Björn was talking about. Really seeing who's working with us, what do our developers, who are they? Are they a bunch of young guys, or do we have some kind of diversity there? Really important for us to follow up on that. Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible, right? I mean, and in terms of assuring that way of thinking is pervasive, it's inclusive and it's kind of sustained, and it's not just as you said, just a paper item. Is music to my ears. So with that, I mean, I think Marisa, you have some interesting, war stories to tell or lessons learned. So what did you guys pick on in terms of use cases or things that were we had not thought about and brought it into the forefront?
For us, is a little bit a back to basic story. We first found out that there is an existing regulation regarding the AI ethics and the reasons why it was created. So that was important for us to understand that there is a regulation that goes in force in next month. And second, that we recognize that the robotics process automation and automated decision-making algorithms are already in operation across the company, and that we should look closer into them. not only our use case, but there are other cases that we should register them and start looking at them. And probably use the risk assessment for each and every one of them, or prioritize them, and then look at them
Right.
one by one.
So it sounds like it gave you a framework for asking the right questions and get deeper, and then just make it kind of ongoing, sustained practice. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. And then, I mean, let's go. I think it's the panel question to all of you, right? I mean, we have all seen the history of corporate social responsibility, and people who did it early on really found that, you know, it starts becoming a competitive element also for your organization. So how far is AI sustainability and the way to think about is impacting you from a competitive position in terms of, especially in this world of millennials, who's the market segment, they do worry and they do care about these topics. But would love to hear your thoughts. Perhaps we start with you, Fiona, and then others.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. I think you're putting out a really very important group for us, the millennials, and we have a lot to learn from that. The awareness has increased drastically. And this is in one sense how data has changed in its significance. We now need to treat data as like a crown jewel. It's not the kind of stuff that you can harvest and throw away and use however you wish. Millennials, after the Cambridge Analytica and all the rest of it, are so much more aware, so much more questioning. And if we do something stupid with their data, they'll go somewhere else. There's no doubt about that. So it's absolutely fundamental for us to be really consistent and transparent in our way of working with data. Absolutely. And we see the need. I mean, when AI comes into play, we see the importance of keeping the human touch there. I think that's something else that our millennials and our other key stakeholders will ask for, as you guys were talking about. Well, who made this decision? How did it happen? Who's in charge here? Those things really fundamental that we maintain and are very open about. Yeah.
Great. Marisa, your thoughts? And then we go to Björn.
On the competitive position of the risk scanning, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, as you embark on
I think that it was evident to us that all type of risks may exist in the organization, like, for example, privacy intrusion, faulty conclusions from the algorithms, or violation of trust. And all this come from potential overfit or misfit of the data model, or as Elaine explained at the beginning, immature algorithms, and so on. And having the risk scan, you can probably understand where risks may stem from, and get a good head start to prepare properly, and first of all, remediate all the issues that you might find along the way, and then definitely comply with the forthcoming regulation.
Yeah, and definitely helps you as an organization as well on a broader picture. So, and beyond, what do you think it helps you, as opposed to, as the beginning we mentioned, right? You are the potential competition for LinkedIn, but if you do these things sustainably, how does it help your organization?
Well, a lot, actually. I think that it gives us, of course, a competitive piece here, because for one thing in this is that if we can be transparent, that means that we can also have explainability. And if we can have explainability, then we can actually, then we can get the trust from the users as well. Because if we only say that you put your data in here and we give you something in the end, we cannot say what, we cannot tell you why, and we cannot backtrack the decisions or the recommendations that we do, then of course we would lose the trust of the users, both from talents and from recruiters and hiring managers and so. But I think that it also gives us something else as well, and that is not only a competitive edge towards the market per se, but I would say that it gives us a competitive edge because it helps us put our priorities right, because we and everyone else has so much to do. So when you are prioritizing between different functionalities, features, decisions that you're doing internally in your own company, then having this as guidelines for what to prioritize, that is for sure a competitive edge, especially in the long term.
Fantastic. I think this does bring pretty interesting thought leadership together. I do want to conclude with just first of all thanking all of our panelists. It's been a great conversation, but let me just first hand over to Elaine, just to kind of summarize where we are, what are the key takeaways, and you know, how others who are watching this session can leverage from the MetricStream and AISC partnership and really start thinking about making ethical AI sustainable in your practices, in your organizations. Over to you, Elaine.
Great. So I wanted to go back to one of the comments that Marisa made. I think she used the word health check, and that's exactly what the tool that AISC and MetricStream are launching now on the market is a tool that any company anywhere can complete a self-assessment and start to see their own health check where risks or potential pitfalls could occur. And that's what all the companies here have participated in and supported us in the beta testing of that product. So the product is now available. So we think that any company anywhere should really start to look into how their technology is scaling and think about not waiting for something to happen and try to fix it later, but start being proactive now in the same way that other risks would be assessed, whether those are security risks or business continuity or any other compliance risks that they may be working with. So as a teaser, I'd like to just bring up the slide where anyone can go on our website and try what we call the mini risk scanning, which is just a very simplified version of the health check that everybody here on the panel did. You can go on the website shown here at www.aisustainability.org and try out the tool and hopefully gain some new insights for your business, and come back to us or MetricStream if you'd like to explore that further. And I think when it comes to wrapping up the panel, I think each one of the companies that spoke here today is on the next frontier. This is the next sustainability frontier. Just the way that chemical pollution was in focus 40 years ago, we still have a massive problem with climate change. That's not going away. But as we come into the future and everything becomes more and more digital, this will be a frontier that every company and every organization is going to need to start to work with. So here you see the trailblazers, and it will be great maybe to follow up next year and see how far we've all come. Thank you, Vida.
Okay. Thank you panelists, and just to add to what Elaine was saying, the think about the link she sent in terms of just start as a starting point. It's a way to think about how you sustain this way of doing business. So it's not a checklist. It's more like about asking the right set of questions, and then you need to figure out as you sustain forward, as you build new programs. Not only next few months or quarters, but year over year, right? That's the foundation of GRC, if you will, is how do you sustain these kind of practices and thinkings and checks and balances so that you are running a well risk managed organization rather than stumbling along as these things come up. So it's all about sustainability. It's all about making sure that you're asking the right questions. And I hope the examples that you heard in this session today, as well as this tool, you'll leverage and reach out to us, any one of us, and we will take it up from here. And with that, I would like to conclude this session. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, and
Thanks,
bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye-bye.